there was that news report a couple of days ago on the by the New York Times. Was it a couple of days ago? Or
It was over the weekend. It was like a long form investigative piece. It might have been included in a magazine. I'm not sure, but it's on the heels of something we covered last week, which was an NBC report out of Nebraska, very close to where Kowalski lives, where there were reports and photographic evidence of children, very young children working in slaughterhouse cleaning facilities. And then it seems like that kind of escalated, and the New York Times had a really good long form piece where they interviewed over 100 children in 20 states who work a variety of jobs and do so under in secrecy, essentially, as a part of like a larger expose on the child labor epidemic.
Apparently, the big issue is that a lot of these corporations will use sort of like a temporary worker agencies, or will just use worker agencies, so that they do not have to have, or at least their argument is, we just don't know. We hire this agency to bring in workers, and we have no way of knowing.
Like that's the same thing like fashion does with regards to textiles and sweatshops, right? But it's like, that's one thing when you're taking advantage of sweatshop labor in Bangladesh. Like, this is right here and it's 2023. How do you think you should be able to verify stuff like this?
Exactly. I mean, there's a far more plausible deniability, although I would argue it's also BS too, even regardless. Right. But so the White House has laid out new initiatives to investigate these violations. The Department of Labor will target not just the factories and the suppliers that illegally employ children, but also the larger companies that have had child labor in their supply chains. Companies have escaped fines in the past by blaming those agencies or other subcontractors when violations are discovered. So in other words, if you're a factory that I don't know, if you're a sneaker company and all you do is basically get the sneakers and put them in a box and then sell them, you can no longer pretend that you're not responsible for who's gluing the soles on the sneakers. I mean, this is a bad example, but that's what it is. The Times found products made with child labor in the American supply chains of major brands and retailers, including Ben & Jerry's, which was, I guess, spun off from Unilever recently, Fruit of the Loom, Ford, General Motors, J. Crew, Walmart, Whole Foods, and Target. Grand Rapids, Michigan, children work late night at plants operated by the Hearthside Food Solutions, which makes and packages food for other companies, including General Mills, Frito-Lay, and Quaker Oats. That seems to be a big one, this Hearthside. The Department of Labor has begun an investigation into Hearthside, administration officials said. That may have already taken place before that report. It's unclear. Federal investigators have long complained that the maximum fine for violations, $15,000 per occurrence, is not enough to deter child labor. And of course not, right? Because these kids are probably getting paid sub-minimum wages as it is. They can't complain. They can't go to the Department of Labor. A $15,000 bonus for, these kids, essentially, it doesn't go to the kids. It just costs the companies, and that's if they're caught, is in no way a deterrent whatsoever.
Cost of doing business. Don't have to use unionized labor, can use kids that are terrified they'll get deported if they say anything.
And every time you hire one of these kids, you are depressing the wages of an adult. So that $15,000 goes a long way to make it profitable for you. That's assuming you were actually caught with all the child labor you're using. In the past 2 years, according to the Times, more than 250,000 children have come into this country alone. They are looking for cash, obviously, both to send home and so that they can live in this country. Children are now working hazardous jobs in every state and across industries. The Times found they're taking jobs in slaughterhouses, construction sites, commercial bakeries, and at least a dozen underage migrant workers have been killed on the job since 2017, including a 16-year-old who fell from and was crushed by an earth mover he was driving in Georgia. Others have been seriously injured, losing legs and shattering their backs in falls. One Hearthside worker, a girl named Carolina Yock, 15, described a grueling schedule of juggling school and 8-hour swing shifts, packaging Cheerios each day. Representative from Hearthside said last week that it found workers through a staffing company and would implement better controls. It's just amazing. Like the idea that like you're sitting on, like there's a manager there. They don't realize that these workers are really young.
Oh, no, they do.
So shabby.
And with that kind of machinery where the child was crushed, isn't there supposed to be some licensing or some regulation about if you can operate that? I mean, back to libertarian callers that we have call into this show. This is why there needs to be like standardization of rules for when you can do certain kinds of jobs and going through processes like that.
So that's the Department of Labor is looking into that. We'll see how far that goes, frankly. And of course, because we can't have any type of like legitimate, comprehensive immigration reform in this country, the DHS is either sort of in one of those situations where they either release, either hold these children for an extended period of time, or release them without the funding and the controls to make sure that they're okay and the support that these kids need.
And there's also state legislatures controlled by Republicans that are trying to make this legal, by the way. Like a bill introduced in Iowa last month would allow 14-year-olds to work in meatpacking plants. And in Chris Sununu in New Hampshire loosened regulations on children working in restaurants and things like that. So
give them something to do after school, toughen them up a little bit.
And so like the mythology that they say, I was a kid working at the ice cream store after school trying to make a little extra money. I mean, there are those kids that do that. But what these laws are really designed to do is to let corporations exploit migrant labor kids. That's what this is about.
Yeah, and it also like puts to lie all this BS about people who say they're for like restrictive border policies because of what it does for like the labor share, because that we're undergoing that experiment and there's no like we're moving in the opposite direction of trying to, like you say, formalize child labor and stuff like that when the labor gets tight.
This is the party that's obsessed with the Democrats drinking the blood of children and pedophiles and protecting kids, I thought too, right?